Well, good morning, and thank you all for joining us. We are really excited about the opportunity to share with you about robotic process automation from a business leader and business user's perspective. RPA is really changing the way that companies do business, and this Salix works with some of the top companies, healthcare providers, and law firms, both regionally and globally. There are similar questions that most of them have when they start considering implementing RPA. Who owns RPA? Is it IT or the business? Will it really work in our environment? Which software solution is right for our organization? How do we scale? The technology sounds great, but what are the landmines? What are the pitfalls that could exist as folks start thinking through the opportunity? And so this morning we have an opportunity to hear from a great organization that's in the midst of their RPA journey. Ohio National Financial Services implemented RPA just about a year ago. And we have Kathy Marsh, who will be bringing the business perspective, and Jeremy Pfeiffer, who's going to be presenting the IT leader's perspective. And then we're also going to have some videos at the end that will share how end users that have been certified as RPA developers, how they're interacting with RPA within the organization. And so we're still waiting for Kathy. We're having some technical difficulty with Kathy. So Kathy, whenever you can hear us or want to try joining, feel free to pipe in. But Jeremy, in the meantime, would you share a little bit about your role at Ohio National?
Yeah, so my name is Jeremy Pfeiffer. I am a manager in the infrastructure. When we started into the RPA journey, I was actually a infrastructure architect for the organization. I've got a great perspective, having gone from some RPA endeavors elsewhere to walking into an organization that was looking forward-thinking, thinking about how to do more with the same and how to increase productivity across the board. And in my role, I see that day to day. I get asked the hard questions in my previous role and my current role, and I like to try and deliver on those things.
Hey, John.
That's me.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello. Sorry, I still can't get my video to work, so.
No problem. Well, thanks so much for going through the technical challenges. But if you'll share a little bit about your role at Ohio National.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Kathy Marsh, as John mentioned. I'm currently the Operations Project and Shared Services Officer for Ohio National. I've been with Ohio National for about 23 years. In my current role, I represent the business for major projects and work closely with our IT partners like Jeremy to accomplish our objectives.
And so both Jeremy and Kathy are going to provide a wealth of knowledge and experience about their RPA journey, but we also want to make sure that we give you the opportunity to be able to ask any questions that you might have. So as we go, feel free to put any questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to address them during this session. But before we get started, I want to make sure that we level set to ensure that everyone participating this morning is clear on what robotic process automation is and why companies are so excited about its potential. And so the only thing that I don't like about robotic process automation is the name, because it conjures up images in our heads about physical robots. But robotic process automation are software robots that get installed on your computer, and it allows and they have the ability to mimic human behavior. So let's just give an example of if every Friday morning you have to create a report and you have to pull data from 3 different systems and bring that data together, format it into an Excel report, and then email that to 5 people, you can actually go ahead and train a bot to take over that task because it's manual, it's repetitive, and it's rules-based. And so RPA allows your best people to do what they're best at more often, which we've seen have a tremendous impact on both the results and the morale within organizations. But in addition to being able to take over tasks and support a human in their duties, bots can also replace roles and even full departments depending on the functions that are detailed within those operations. And so Deutsche Bank, for example, replaced 18,000 roles with bots. And so this can be an augmenting existing staff, and then also really radically changing how that your workforce is established. I love this definition by Leslie Wilcox, where she says RPA takes the robot out of the human. And so that's really what it does. It's taking those repetitive, mundane tasks that people often hate doing, that are often error prone, and it allows for your people to be focused on things that they need human strengths for, like emotional intelligence, reasoning, judgment, interacting with customers. And so the software can do, this just gives you a high level understanding of some of the functions that a software bot can perform. So it can log into applications, it can move files and folders, it can read and write from databases, it can scrape from websites, connect systems via APIs, extract data from documents, open emails and attachments, and make calculations. And so I want to give just a quick example using platforms that many people are familiar with of a bot going through a process in Salesforce and in QuickBooks. And so what this bot is going to do is it's going to show how you can log into Salesforce and select the Opportunities tab. You can then select Details, and then collect the opportunity name, the account name, and the amount. And then it will log into QuickBooks, create a new invoice, take the details data and enter it into the invoice, the opportunity name, the account name, and the amount, save the invoice, and then go back into Salesforce and update the invoice payment status, saying that not only has it been created, but it's been paid. And so now we'll go through and watch as a bot performs some of those functions. And so the beauty of this is not only the speed, but also the accuracy, where that the bot doesn't do data entry mistakes, it doesn't forget to do a process, it doesn't forget to follow all of the procedural instructions. It does it fully and completely and accurately every time. So hopefully that gives you a feel for RPA. Now we want to jump in and talk specifically about Ohio National's journey. And so Kathy, when you think about why Ohio National started looking into RPA originally, walk me back through what the thought process was when it was initially discussed.
Sure. So for several years now, there's been an interest in RPA from the business to find a solution to deal with those never-ending issues that there's always more work than resources available to accomplish it. The other one, important one, was the ability to make improvements for efficiency without adding more to the plate of our IT partners. That was key. We wanted something that we could do on our own with the assistance of IT. And also the future state key objective was to automate those redundant processes so we could focus on spending more time on customer service and those more difficult tasks. So through our existing partnership with Salix, I reached out to John, I think it was early 2019, to begin the conversations on RPA vendor selection.
And so was the interest in RPA, was it initiated by a specific business unit or IT? Who kind of drove that initially?
It was business driven, but we got IT involved fairly early to help provide the guidelines and the framework. Since the business understood the processes and systems and data structure, we needed them as part of the initiative.
And so Jeremy, from those early discussions, was it difficult to get buy-in organizationally?
So you're talking about organizational transformation. And one of the biggest things to get buy-in, we noticed, was presenting the problem of, hey, there's always more work than there are bodies to complete it. So how do you leverage that without expanding your annual FTEs? How do you absorb that? How do you accomplish more with the same? Initially, there was a lot of product diversity and looking across the board, but really the buy-in started to come when we formulated a strategy. We stuck with the high-level strategy, and then we started to fill in the tactical elements to make sure that we can build and get that support. And that was when you really see the buy-in start to gravitate, start to pull together, start to get on board, and the positive momentum go with RPA.
And you had used earlier in earlier discussions, talked about empowerment and how you felt like that was a real key for how that you guys approach this and how that you kind of got that buy-in. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the conversations is always, are you buying a piece of software? Is it just fulfilling a business process need? Or are you actually making a definitive stance, a change of a cultural environment? And that's where we focused on, hey, we wanted to make a cultural change. We wanted to focus on empowerment. IT is a certain amount of people, and that wealth of knowledge is great. But the truth in RPA, and when you look at this first iteration as we continue through the cycle, truth is the real and valuable asset is the intellectual property. The process you showed before is actually knowledge that no vendor can provide you. What you have inside your own business is how it's executed, the full process, the workarounds, the break fix. Bots don't know that out of the box. So any solution you're provided, you're selling, you're looking at, you're entertaining, you really have to focus on how are you going to support it, how are you going to implement it, how are you going to adopt it. From our perspective, we felt, hey, this is a perfect example of something that we should empower our business. Take our individuals, our business partners, work in this partnership strongly between IT and the business to develop almost a center of excellence, an area where we can provide the tools that the skills, adoption, and the governance and the maintaining of the product can continue on. So we really worked to empower the business. We had a very great partnership, which we continue to every day today. So yeah, definitely. It's been always focused about making sure that we're not just adding counts and adding software, but we're adding value.
That's great. And so then, Kathy, when you think about what were you originally hoping to accomplish by implementing RPA, what were some of those key goals?
Well, there are many key benefits we seek to accomplish RPA, such as cost savings, the automation, and productivity improvements, to name a few. However, our first priority was to develop our in-house skill set for both business users and IT. That was really key to making this initiative successful. Without that, we couldn't stand on our own legs. So we are accomplishing that through our partnership with Salix. That was, I feel, very key in helping us get to where we are right now.
And Jeremy, you had some previous experience with RPA. What was your initial feedback when when RPA was presented? What concerns did you have?
Great question. I'll throw it out there. A lot of times people look at RPA from a reactionary standpoint. It is, how do I solve something that already exists as a problem? Looking at RPA, if you want longevity in RPA, you have to look at it as a strategy. You've got to look at not just the tool to accomplish A and B, but the tool or the tool or part of a process to solve A through Z. It's a very holistic attitude. RPA shortfalls in the past, and you can go back 20 years, you see things like AutoIT, scripting, all kinds of choice avenues. What happens, you see a lot of degradation in maintaining. You see a lot of overhead. You're putting in systems to solve things from a very focused standpoint doesn't necessarily provide longevity. And one of the biggest things, depending on your industry, was focusing on, hey, what is the breadth of technology you're talking about? As an insurance individual, we have definitely legacy applications. We have things that have not been, for the better sake, hey, it may not have been modified to a complex level in the last 10 years. How do you make things work between that was a great question. So you really have to understand the ask and make sure that you're not just reacting, but you're providing a path forward. And that's really the the reason for success today is looking down the road, not just at the speed bump in front of us.
That's great. And so, Kathy, what were the first steps in evaluating RPA?
Well, the first steps were to get buy-in from business and IT senior management. We knew this had to be a collaboration. So that was our very first step. And then the next was to, the initial cost benefit analysis. So we performed that with the help of Salix, providing us some cost benefit. Then once the decision was made to move forward by business IT, I reached back out to Salix for their assistance. We've already had a history with Salix on an outsourcing project, so they were already a trusted partner of ours. So I began the conversation with John, felt comfortable with his ideas in developing a roadmap based on Ohio National's needs. So with that, and along with knowing that Salix is a top RPA firm, it was a pretty easy decision to move forward with our partnership with Salix to start the evaluation process.
And then how did you choose what processes to use during the proof of concept phase?
Well, again, I worked with Salix to identify processes that were realistic to achieve during the POC timeframe, which was to be completed. We wanted something that 2 to 3 day window. And the other important part is we wanted to be done in-house. So with those guidelines, I reached out to our business areas to provide a submission of processes to be considered. So we got anywhere, probably 25 submissions from just our ops area. It was important also to make sure that we touched our core systems, especially our legacy systems, just to make sure that we had the confidence that it would work in our environment. We also had to consider the availability of our SME. So we wanted non-IT feedback because what we wanted was a business user-friendly solution. So that was important to make sure that the business SME was able to participate in the POC development. The submissions were then reviewed by business leadership and prioritized. And then I sent the top 3 on to John for final review, and we moved forward with Salix's recommendation. I also worked with our IT partners, Jeremy being the main focus, to provide an environment for our POC. So we knew that setup was real important to be able to accomplish what we wanted to accomplish in those short period of time.
That's great. And so, Jeremy, when you think about what software options you evaluated during that POC, what were they and what criteria did you use when making that final selection?
Sure. So, I always get a smile when we talk about software evaluation. As many of you, I've been in the position of making the call, not necessarily the right call all the time, but the call on which way to go. We've looked at soft motive, automation anywhere, UiPath, and there were even some others that were on the table. The question wasn't necessarily focused on what it can give us or what Gartner's showing on the screen. You're going to hear conversations about, this is the best in the industry, this is the best practice, but you really need to walk back for a second and realize you are looking at how you're changing things. And the top of the tier may not be the best or the bottom may be the best. You don't know. You need to look at the business objective that you're trying to achieve. For us, we looked at something that, hey, we don't want to put 20 new IT individuals out there. We actually want to go through and gravitate towards getting ownership outside of IT while building a guide, like a rail system, where in fact that within these guidelines, the business will succeed. It's kind of that attitude that, hey, as long as we provide the framework, and that's quintessential, they can succeed. Does the solutions that we looked at fit that framework? When you talk automation, the best tool you have in your back pocket is actually your pen or your pencil, because you really want to look at what is the long-term objective here. And then as you go through it, iteration. I'm a big fiscally responsible individual. So when we look through TILs, we look through iteration. Do I drop a lot of, do I put a lot of capital into a year one product that I have no ROI on? If I'm looking for 5 years, that's a great sell. But I also have to talk about education, advancement. For us, we landed on Softmotive's product because it had a transitional build process. That means what you built in one translated to the higher level product. So we never really had a loss in development. That was one of those key elements. And truth, we can look at it from a technology standpoint through and through and compare, server costs, cloud costs, all those different elements, interfaces, APIs, all those conversations. But it really came down to, at the end of the day, execution, testing execution with the business and seeing what they responded best. If our culture can't consume that change, then we're going to end up failing with the product. And when we went through that evaluation, technology was a separate evaluation, but all in all, we provided guidelines. We locked them together in a partnership with the business and moved forward with Softmotive.
And so several months ago, when it was announced that Microsoft purchased Softmotive and that was going to be a key part of their Power Automate solution going forward, what was your reaction?
I was right. No, but in all seriousness, hey, you win some, you lose some. We saw the potential and the value. Because at the end of the day, when you look at SaaS solutions, the future, we can talk about the complexity of bots and the very nuanced data transfer, data lake conversations, or we can focus on the business process themselves. Truth is you see that product like Softmotive is really about focused on the end user and up, not the enterprise and down. And that perspective, that viewpoint from an architectural standpoint is quintessential to success. We build a 3-year plan. We put iteration in place. We have stepping stones. We've achieved and succeeded and surpassed those, and we continue forward. And I think it's all about that partnership and that open dialogue. During the whole time, I'm very candid, as you can tell. That direct dialogue, that honesty, that open up frontness about goals and objectives was quintessential.
And so one of the things that I love about your approach, and we were presenting to the C-suite of a large bank that we work with where we've implemented RPA, and their CTO was explaining how that he looked at innovation within their organization as a tree, and that the trunk of that tree from an innovation standpoint was IT, and that each branch was all the departments within the organization. As you got further and further along the branch to the leaves, which were the people that were actually doing the work, you could see that IT had less and less of an influence from an innovation standpoint. And so what he loves about RPA, and I think you've reiterated it, is the ability for the leaves or the employees to be able to innovate from the outside in. And so can you talk to me a little bit about that, how that has impacted how you guys have moved forward with RPA?
Yeah, I mean, I can throw it out like this. The solution will always change. I think the best statement someone has ever made is RPA is a tool in a toolbox. Okay, when you look at it, if you are very myopic on what tool I bought and how it works to that degree, you're going to miss the, as I can see in the questions, even the low-code development platforms, you're going to miss the API calls. You're going to miss microservices in the future. You will miss these things because you're very myopic on making something work. The question of success is no longer based off of, we can always say it's based off of financials, and I fully agree. But as you move towards RPA, it's actually operational efficiency, it's productionalization, and its ability for the end user to not demand internal services. So what is harder to show on a balance sheet or when we look at our financials is a conversation that the 1 hour of IT need, if you want to do it in a cost-benefit analysis, the 1 hour of IT need is all you required for a month of production support, work, development. That's incredible. I mean, you can't really sell that better. You can do all the numbers about servers, cloud farms, all these things, but it really comes down to the business user executed something that made them better, advanced their career set, developed a center for excellence, improve the processes of the organization, provide governance and repetitive action. success is only so many metrics, but I think there's several of them listed there. And that's where I completely agree with the tree in the trunk statement.
And so you had talked about Ohio National strategy for implementing RPA and kind of identified a 3-tiered approach. Would you walk us through that briefly?
One of the biggest things we saw was, and I think people gap, is they look for a product and they look to put it into action quickly. Acquisition of intellectual property was number one. The internal processes, evaluation of those processes, defining things to non-IT elements is a new experience. When you talk with a business, it's a great conversation to go over, well, you'd like this automated, but is it actually worth the time? If you're only getting 1 hour return on a 100-hour development cycle, that's a great question. Should it be done? With automation, you're going to have all these, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But unless you've built up a way to bring in that, and that's where number 2 comes in, the governance system, then you're going to be spinning your wheels developing things because people went and started doing rather than people understood a governance, a guideline, a framework to execute in alignment. We did the acquisition, which was really focused on getting those processes in. We put in strong governance where it's not IT, it's not business. It's a group together, working together to make decisions for the business in line with the strategy. To help perform we're in a financial institute. It's something we have to be cognizant of. Building automated processes that cause, violations or break regulations is a concern. So being honest, open, and inclusive of the organization to make sure that we develop within the guidelines, even when the business is developing, is very important. So that's why we have that governance. And then continuous improvement. Hey, because year 1's is good, doesn't mean year 1's isn't reviewed. So everything you develop, you improve, you recycle, you improve upon, you library, you use these functionalities, you built these basic services to chain into other things. There's always got to be a cycle of improvement, because when you're talking about operational efficiencies, you're focusing on the seconds, the minutes, the hours you can get back, because everything is a cost at that point. So that's why we put the 3-tiered approach in place. And, I think, we've been pretty successful with it so far.
That's great. And Kathy, how'd you go about implementing that strategy?
Yes. So obviously this was new territory for us. I think there's only one person, Jeremy, that had any experience in RPA. So it was important to us to structure business to be able to support the implementation. So one of the main things we needed was a dedicated full-time resource in the role of an RPA manager. And this person's responsibility would be scheduling, training, the certification of the business developers. We decided early on that we would need at least 2 business developers for each area within ops, one to develop, one to UAT, and one to be backup in case something happened in the RPA in the absence of one or the other. The other role of the RP manager was to manage Salix's time. We invested in Salix's services to help us through development, certification process, and also they were key with helping us. We invited them to be part of our steering committee to help us develop the framework around processes and prioritizations. Excuse me. Keeping the development on the governance on task was really important. Part of the governance was half of IT and half of business, and we came together with IT providing their guidelines, and we're having our business guidelines as well. And together we were able to work through the governance pretty quickly. It was fluid, and it still remains fluid as we review things. We were constantly, as Jeremy mentioned, making continuous improvements. So this RPA manager also manages the submissions of the RPA process through production. So I think that was very key early on to make sure we set up this roles of someone's full-time responsibility.
That's great. And so then in the early days of the steering committee, the word partnership was used often as a new way IT and business could form a partnership within Ohio National. Can you share more about that, Kathy?
Sure. So as I mentioned, this was the first of a, I think mentioned earlier, this was first of its kind where business and IT actually joined forces going into a project, each as a champion, trying to figure this out. It was truly a collaboration of both parties to bring this solution in-house. For the steering committee, as I mentioned, we identified folks on both the business team and the IT team, and we brought those individuals together to start the steering committee. And Salix helped us and provided some guidance, because, that we were all new to this. They were able to help guide us and make recommendations along the way. And the idea of this is as we will add new members to the team as we expand into other business areas. So again, even the steering committee will be a fluid committee. We'll continue with continued improvements.
Great. And so now just talking through the success of your program. So Kathy, if you wouldn't mind kind of run through some of these highlights.
Sure. So the biggest change we had with our strategy clearly was COVID-19. This year alone has brought many challenges to business and IT, just with the normal course of business. So you can imagine the potential impact to our strategy on executing this new RPA initiative that we had just launched a few months earlier. I'll add that we are still working remotely, and the decision to return to our home office will be sometime after the new year. So RPA has been operating longer remotely than it has been in-house, which we feel is a huge success on our part in IT. While IT was busy trying to transition the entire company to work remotely, and due to the fact that we selected a software that met the business needs for self-service, and we had created a great foundation with working with our IT partners, RPA development didn't have to stop and wait for IT while they sorted out all the challenges COVID-19 brought. So we were able to make some adjustments along the way and execute our strategy remotely. So while working remotely, we certified 20 business associates for RPA. We also developed several processes. We moved 12 RPA processes in production, and we added another 24 more processes that is currently in the development state to UAT state. So we're really happy that we were able to continue our strategy, and more so we were able to be successful remotely. Jeremy talked about changes. We have also made of the 14 processes that are in production, we've already made changes to 4 enhancement changes. We've put it in production, and the business decide they wanted to do more, change it to work a little bit more efficient. So we're really happy that we've already within months are already making those enhancements. One of the other things that we noticed was when calculating our ROI, we found a need to update our submission form. It lacked consistency in processes. For one example, name changes from submission to production, adding new roles for individuals executing RPA, managers versus frontline. We truly wanted to understand our ROI, and I kept having to go back to our RPA manager asking questions, and we thought it was best to move forward with making those changes in our submission forms and having some type of post submission checklist so that we had everything documented for future needs. And I can't iterate enough how continuous improvement is important. It's one of our priorities. Being not dynamic has been critical to the success of our program. We feel it's not a specialty group. We feel it's the core success of our RPA team.
It's amazing that you guys were able to do that in a year where that 3 months in to kind of kicking off, 4 months into kicking off your RPA program, the whole world changes, and yet you continue to progress and have the type of success that you've had. It's really an amazing testament to the two of you leading it, as well as to the organization's commitment to it. So I'm going to attempt, I know we've had some technical difficulties, so I'm going to attempt to play a video from one of the end users from Ohio National that will talk about her experience. And so if you can't hear that, then we'll move on and answer some questions. But all right, well, we'll put that up on our website, because it's a great video. That does a great job of finding out the impact that it is. We actually have 2 videos from folks at Ohio National that talk about having never even heard of RPA 12 months ago, and now they're building processes within the organization that are having enormous impacts on productivity, quality, as well as cost. And so I know that there have been a couple of questions. And so one of the questions was, what are the best tool sets to implement RPA across applications and technologies? And so I think Jeremy can address a little bit just from the proof of concept process that we went through. We don't believe that RPA technology all of it has some basic kind of Me Too capabilities, but the way that the licensing structured, the way that it interacts with different products, its availability of their bot stores and the type of interaction that's kind of available out of the box, as well as its connection to AI and more advanced technologies, are different between products. And so that's why we feel like it's an important opportunity to be able to allow for clients to evaluate multiple software platforms. I think even at Ohio National, the front runner early on of the technology was not what they ended up selecting once the POC process went through. And so there are some great tools out there, but Jeremy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that particular question.
I'm going to turn that question inward for Scott. Hey, the best tools you really have, because John is going to provide great external resources, but what you really want to look at is if I threw out TOGAF and looked at internal analysis, you want to look at your application communication diagrams. You want to look at from a high level your viewpoints on your data stores and how you're doing things, and you also want to drill down into your latest BIA or business process analysis from your resiliency team or even your business units to help you discover the processes, to understand the integration points, and also to help you in the selection process. You're going to see if you combine those 3 elements together, those are all internal tools you have, and with working with like John, you're going to have that go into the best conversation prepared to know what you need, how you can utilize it or can't utilize it, and make the best assessment possible.
And then the next question is, how do you see a combo of RPA and low development platforms impacting the digital transformation journey many of us have begun? And so our experience is that actually the way that Salix got into the RPA space was 5 or 6 years ago when we were helping organizations with their AI and business intelligence and data analytics capabilities. When you start building those technologies and then you see the back end data, and unfortunately for a lot of our clients, and I think a lot of organizations, data integrity is not strong. And so so we were looking for what's the most cost-effective way to be able to have a dramatically positive impact on either cleaning up data or making sure that data coming in going forward is of high quality. And we felt like RPA was the great solution around that. Now, at the time, it didn't have the interface to be able to make it so that you could have citizen developers and kind of roll it out to end users. But over time, as that has enhanced, we feel like RPA is really a key cornerstone to leveraging digital transformation, because it also, because the cost is so, the cost savings is so dramatic for most organizations, it allows for you to be able to fund some of the other innovation that you want to do upstream. So, but Jeremy, any thoughts on that question?
I love this question. This is very, John knows me. I love technology advancement, innovation, but at a reasonable cost. So I throw it out there that low code development platforms still have a framework. They still have a box with which, the GUI provides this. RPA is a bigger box. But the most important thing is if you're looking at both together or them independently, you're still doing the same assessment on the front end. So they can actually stem from the same executable goal, but they're really about how do I do it? So low code development does it here, RPA does it there, but the intake and what you choose to consume is the same. So as long as you're using the same methodologies to intake, you'll be successful in both, and you'll learn when to leverage towards low code versus RPA, and you will make that internal decision tree. They're great things. I think back 20 years and I think back now and I say, hey, it's amazing what you can do with a GUI interface today that you couldn't in the past. But also you've got to, you realize that you're still working within somebody else's constraints. And just a paired warning on that is, as you make that transformation, it's great, but in certain industries, be aware of your legacy dependencies, because you can get too far down the road without having to make the decision. And you need to be able to put controlled checkpoints to say, hey, I went low code, maybe we need to walk that back before we've fully invested in that. There's an opportunity there. It's an internal decision for your organization yourself. But, I encourage putting those control points, because they only take one moment to check or a year worth of pain. So just, some advice.
And then we had one of the kind of our last question, and so it's a long one. So so this particular person said, when we launched our initiative, we had to make the decision regarding whether we purchase the AI-enabled package or not. We made the wrong decision up front and purchased the non-AI product and wasted a lot of money trying to make that work. How has the offerings evolved, and is this still a decision customers have to make? Some applications can be simple and others will need bots to learn. Any guidance to those starting or restarting the journey? And so I think Jeremy earlier made the point around the way that they interacted and looked at the software platforms. And so what we try to do is make sure that we're not locking a client into a product that's not going to be able to grow with them. And so I think that, and Jeremy can speak to it more specifically, but for lots of our clients, what they're looking to do is they want to start out and they've heard all this great things about RPA. And so, but they also have, similar to the question, they've ran into previous situations where they bought software. Jeremy, refers to it as shelfware, where eventually, you buy the wrong product and then it destroys the whole concept that this technology can have value within your organization. And so I think that's something that we really try to help our clients with on the front end, is to help make sure that they're not just buying for today, but they understand the roadmap for how they can quickly transition into more advanced technologies within that software suite so that they're not stuck with a bad purchase. But Jeremy, any thoughts?
You know, the AI space has grown significantly over years, and especially in RPA. I'll be honest, you can take that same question and kind of even put it in the security world with AI products. But I want to use the longer question is sustainability. The real question when making that decision, it doesn't mean you made the wrong decision and you feel the pain points. It's which is most sustainable. AI products, they also have a lifespan too. They also have eventuality of training and continued training. As you do upgrades, you have to relearn AI. You have to reteach bots. You have to put that in. There is the same overhead. It may not feel like you get the wins early on, but AI products, there's a lot of overhead, and you're focusing a lot on data. And data is what I see a lot more in that AI product scope. With the manual non-AI approach enabled, you're looking at more people process things, and that's where you're centric at. Looking to making sure as you go on your journey forward, really ask your questions of your centralization of data. If I'm looking at, just my quick snapshot of what I think your business is looking at, your centralization of data conversation, and then, also look at, your controls and governance. Because with AI, even though it's repetitive, it's learning, you also have to remember that anything that's in continuous improvement, continuous development, also needs to be able to be auditable, at least in my industry. So you have to put in some overhead there that, just because it ran doesn't mean it always runs. But going forward, hey, I don't feel that you've necessarily made the wrong decision. It's a lot of lessons learned, and it's a support model for the future. And it actually asks the hard questions. Failure in RPA is not failure overall. I stress this from this program when we got into this. We will fail fast. If we fail fast, that's how we're succeeding. Why? Because we're putting and framing something in a culture that's never touched anything, never done anything, a new path forward, and one that we as an organization can get behind. So I encourage you to take all those decisions that you felt were wrong and maybe do a double assessment and see, were they wrong or was the product just the wrong? And really see, because you may have made the right actions with the wrong product. And that's where, the governance and separating the technology and the end result is important. And that's where governance comes in. So that's my best recommendations. Really hound on a framework before you try to implement when you restart your journey. It's more important to have the 20 people in the room that are guiding the future with a pencil and a paper to plan this out, an architect or two, and then walk away with something that's achievable with goals and milestones and success. That's my recommendation, my thoughts.
And so I want to thank Jeremy and Kathy for your time. And if anybody has any questions, we'll be in our booth. And so would love to chat with you more. But again, Jeremy and Kathy, thank you for your time. And I hope everybody has a great day. Bye-bye.